Kimberly Menster, your Citrus County Veteran Service Officer. Today we're fortunate to have with us retired Army Colonel Mike Prendergast. Colonel Prendergast spent 31 years in the military as a military policeman and paratrooper. After his retirement, he continued his public service as Chief of Staff for Governor Rick Scott, as well as the Executive Director for the Florida Department of Veteran Affairs. He's a Citrus County resident, and he's currently running for Citrus County Sheriff. Welcome.
Thanks, Kim. It's great to be with you.
Oh, thanks for being on the show. Last time we had you on the show, we talked a little bit about your military career. I'd like to talk specifically now about your time in the desert. I know you'd spent about 5 years in the desert. What were some of the things you experienced there, and what moved you the most?
Well, I tell you what moved me the most was protecting the forces that were on the ground with us. The United States of America put troops in harm's way, and as a military policeman, our number one priority is to protect those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, the civilian contractors, and everybody else that was part of the force that helped do the nation's bidding to make sure that our national security interests were protected over there. So each and every day, I was surrounded by a team of world-class professionals from not only the United States Armed Forces, but our coalition partners as well, who really endeavored mightily to ensure that our forces were protected, and all the materiel and all the infrastructure to support that were protected as well, so that we could constitute the things that we needed to do to take care of the mission that we're over there to take care of for our country.
As a commander serving under those conditions, what was your key to keeping morale up and keeping up the tempo with your soldiers?
Getting around and spending as much time with the soldiers as possible. You can't do that from behind the desk. You've got to be out there with the soldiers. You've got to share the same hardships that they share. You got to share in their joys, but you also have to be there whenever they've got some hardships that come upon them, whether it's the loss of a family member or it's some other family tragedy that comes along. We had some great opportunities to take care of all of our soldiers, and we never left any stones unturned when their family really needed something for them to be able to get on a video teleconference and have a chat with a family member. We couldn't send our troops home to attend high school graduations, but we solved that problem by going out and having video teleconference capabilities, so mom or dad could sit in a conference room and be able to watch their son or daughter or several children, for those families that had twins, walk across the stage and get their high school diploma while their parents were half a world or more away during a very important time in their lives.
And that's really important with the multiple deployments that our soldiers and sailors and airmen are going through, and the high tempo of overseas TDYs and things. So I can see where that would be an important and integral part of that.
Well, it was very difficult, and for some of the high demand, low density MOSs like my own as a military policeman in the Special Forces community and the aviation community, we were constantly on a cycle of deploy, redeploy, get ready to go again. In some cases, our young men and women barely had 8 months' time on the ground back home before they were back in the sandbox on another combat deployment. My own son-in-law spent 9 deployments in Afghanistan as an aviator in the Night Stalkers. My son spent a 1-year tour in Afghanistan, and I spent, like you said, 5 years plus during my last 8 years on active duty, rotating between Afghanistan, Iraq, and several other countries over in the Middle East.
I bet your family's very happy to have you home now, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. My wife was mostly worried at all those times when we were over there, when it would be myself plus my son-in-law at the same time in just about the same areas on the map. So pretty tough times for the Prendergast family, but my wife and daughter persevered, as did the rest of the family, and we all came back home intact.
But instead of sitting by the pool and having a nice cool drink, you decided to continue working for the public in the capacity of Chief of Staff for Governor Rick Scott. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it is. When the governor won the election in 2010, he called me a couple of days later and we chatted, and he asked me if I'd like to help him out up in Tallahassee, and I said, absolutely, Governor, anything that you ask for me to do, I'd be happy to serve. And I offered up a couple of suggestions based upon my skill set in either law enforcement or emergency services, because as a provost marshal for the Army in 4 of my key assignments in my senior time in the military, we had police, fire, emergency services, everything for consequence management, plus run an emergency operations center, all underneath the responsibilities and duties of the provost marshal. So I offered up because this is my home. I was born and raised here, and I really wanted to make Florida a better place for the next generation of young men and women who make Florida their home.
And what a skill set to tap into. You were then then appointed the executive director of FDVA. How did you like that portion of your career?
That was fantastic. And the most important thing about that career opportunity for almost 5 years was to really serve the legends, those giants of the armed forces from the greatest generation to the same generation as me. And I stood on their shoulders as a young man growing up in the profession of arms. And now I got to go back and pay them back for them mentoring me, leading me, and making me the young man that I was, and then the more senior officer that I became because of their leadership and mentorship. And it was just a great way to pay them back and say thanks.
What are some of the programs and initiatives that were rolled out by FDVA while you were executive director that you're most proud of?
Well, we are a very small, lean organization, and the thing I think that's most important over my tenure is managing 1,100 people who are part of the agency and a budget in excess of $100 million. And I did it all without going back to the legislature during my 5-year tenure and asking them for additional money. We operated in black ink, which meant that we were good stewards of the taxpayers' resources. And we actually, at the end of the day, we built our trust fund up at the agency so that we could construct new nursing homes without going back to the taxpayers and asking for taxpayer revenue. That had never been done before, where we used our own revenue from the agency to build nursing homes. And I postured the agency to build a $40 million facility in the last couple of years, and we've got the money to actually build several more facilities like that in the future, as long as my replacement does a good job of watching those dollars.
Well, that's a feather in your cap for sure. My final question for you, what's the best thing for you about living in Citrus County?
Well, we love the recreational opportunities. I grew up here as a young man, spent as many weekends and summers and other times that I could with my family up here on the Withlacoochee River, the lake, or over in Kings Bay, and our kids thrive here when they come and visit and bring all our grandchildren. So we love the recreational opportunities. It's just a great place to call home.
Thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, you want to file a claim with the VA or talk about pension or benefits, please contact the Citrus County Veterans Service Office at 527-5915.